The blood on her hands never seemed to wash clean no matter how hard Lily Morrison scrubbed. And when she stepped off the stagecoach into Santa Rosa, California on that scorching afternoon in August 1882, she wondered if she would ever feel whole again. The dust kicked up around her worn boots as she clutched a single carpet bag containing everything she owned, her green eyes scanning the bustling Main Street with its saloons and general stores, its horses tied to hitching posts and men in wide-brimmed hats going about their business. She had spent the last 4 years in a hospital tent during the aftermath of various conflicts across the territories, tending to soldiers and civilians alike as they drew their final breaths, and the weight of all those lost souls pressed against her chest like a stone. Santa Rosa was supposed to be her fresh start, a place where she could use her nursing skills to help the living instead of merely comforting the dying. But as she stood there in the California heat, she felt more lost than ever. Across the street, Asher Hale was loading supplies onto his wagon when he noticed her. He had been running his ranch just outside of town for 6 years now, ever since he turned 20 and inherited the land from his father, and he prided himself on being observant. There was something about the way this woman stood, her posture straight despite obvious exhaustion, her clothes simple but clean, that caught his attention. She looked like someone who had seen too much, and he recognized that look because he saw it in his own mirror sometimes. His own past held shadows he preferred not to examine too closely. Memories of a childhood spent watching his mother die slowly from consumption, while doctors could do nothing. Memories of his father drinking himself into an early grave from the grief. He tipped his hat politely when their eyes met across the dusty road, and something flickered in her expression before she looked away. Lily found lodging at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, who asked few questions and demanded payment weekly. The room was small but adequate, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. She unpacked her meager belongings and sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence wash over her. For 4 years, silence had been a luxury. There had always been moaning, crying, screaming, the sounds of men calling for mothers and wives who were hundreds of miles away. She had held their hands as they died, written their final letters, closed their eyes when the light faded. Some had been no older than 18, boys really, sent to fight battles they barely understood. Others had been hardened veterans who wept like children at the end. She had learned to keep her own tears locked away, to present a calm face no matter how her heart shattered. The next morning, she walked to the doctor's office on Main Street. Dr. Samuel Chen was a Chinese immigrant who had faced his share of prejudice, but had earned grudging respect through his skill and dedication. When Lily knocked on his door, he answered with tired eyes that brightened when she explained her experience. He needed help desperately, he told her. Santa Rosa was growing, and he could not handle all the patients alone. There were injuries from ranch work, childbirths, fevers, and ailments of all kinds. He hired her on the spot, and for the first time in weeks, Lily felt a flicker of purpose return. She threw herself into the work with fierce determination. There were cowboys with broken bones from being thrown by horses, children with croup, women struggling through difficult pregnancies. Lily worked long hours, her hands steady as she set bones, cleaned wounds, mixed medicines. Dr. Chen watched her with approval, noting how she never flinched, never hesitated, how she had an almost uncanny ability to remain calm in emergencies. What he did not see was how she lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, remembering all the times her skills had not been enough. Asher came into town every week for supplies, and each time he found his eyes searching for the woman he had seen that first day. He learned her name was Lily Morrison, that she was working with Dr. Chen, that she kept mostly to herself. He invented reasons to linger near the doctor's office, checking his horse's hooves more carefully than necessary, browsing the general store across the street. He felt foolish, like a schoolboy with a crush, but he could not seem to help himself. Their first real conversation happened 3 weeks after her arrival. A ranch hand from a neighboring property had been dragged by a spooked horse, and they brought him into the doctor's office with a badly dislocated shoulder and various cuts and bruises. Dr. Chen was out attending to a difficult birth across town, and Lily was alone. She worked quickly, cleaning the wounds, preparing to set the shoulder. The man was screaming, thrashing, and his friends could barely hold him down. Asher happened to be walking past and heard the commotion. Without thinking, he rushed inside. "Can I help?" he asked, and Lily barely glanced at him as she nodded. "Hold his other arm steady. This is going to hurt him, but it has to be done now before the swelling gets worse." Asher did as she instructed, using his considerable strength to keep the injured man still. He watched as Lily's hands moved with practiced precision, manipulating the shoulder joint. There was a sickening pop, and the man howled, then went limp with relief as the pain immediately lessened. She worked quietly, bandaging, administering laudanum for the pain, giving instructions for care. Her movements were economical, efficient, like a soldier performing drills. When it was over and the man's friends had taken him home, Asher remained. "That was impressive," he said. "You have done that before, many times." Her voice was flat, distant. She was washing her hands in a basin, scrubbing hard. He noticed her hands were red, almost raw. "I'm Asher Hale. I run a ranch about 5 miles north of here, Lily Morrison." She dried her hands on a clean towel, finally looking at him directly. Her eyes were a striking green, but there was something haunted in them. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Hale. Just Asher, please, and it was nothing. You did all the real work." He hesitated, then added, "If you ever need anything, my ranch is the one with the white fencing along the north road. You would be welcome any time." She nodded politely but said nothing, and he took his leave, feeling like he had somehow failed a test he did not know he was taking. Over the following weeks, Asher found himself looking for opportunities to be helpful. When a child at the doctor's office needed a specific herb that grew wild in the hills, he spent an afternoon gathering it. When the office needed firewood for the coming winter, he delivered 3 cords without being asked. Lily accepted these offerings with quiet thanks, but maintained a careful distance. She was cordial but never warm, professional but never personal. It frustrated him in ways he could not articulate. He was 26 years old, established, reasonably handsome according to some, yet this woman treated him with the same polite detachment she showed everyone. He began to wonder if she was running from something or someone. There were no rings on her fingers, no photographs in her room according to Mrs. Patterson's carefully casual mentions, no letters arriving at the post office. It was as if Lily Morrison had simply materialized out of dust and determination. The truth was, Lily was terrified of letting anyone close. She had learned during her years among the dying that attachment led to heartbreak. She had befriended other nurses, had allowed herself to care about certain patients, and every single time, death had torn them away. A nurse named Catherine, who had been like a sister to her, killed when a tent collapsed during a storm. A young corporal who had survived his wounds only to succumb to infection weeks later, despite everything Lily tried. A doctor who had mentored her, who had suffered a heart attack while performing surgery. The list went on, a litany of loss that she carried like stones in her pockets. So she kept herself separate, built walls of professional competence and polite distance. She told herself it was better this way, safer. If she did not care, she could not be hurt. The work was enough. Saving lives was enough. She did not need anything more, but Asher was persistent in the gentlest way possible. He never pushed, never demanded, just remained a steady presence. When there was a particularly difficult case, he somehow appeared to help lift patients or fetch supplies. When she worked late into the night, he made sure someone brought her dinner. When the winter rains came and the streets turned to mud, he was there with his wagon to drive her home. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lily found herself looking forward to seeing him. It was in December, 4 months after her arrival, that everything shifted. A family passing through town brought disease with them, a virulent fever that spread quickly through Santa Rosa. Dr. Chen fell ill within days, leaving Lily to manage alone. The makeshift infirmary filled with patients, and Lily worked around the clock, moving from bed to bed, administering what treatment she could. But this illness was particularly cruel, and despite her best efforts, people began to die. First an elderly man, then a child of 7, then a young mother. Each death tore at Lily's carefully constructed defenses. She had thought she was past this, thought she had learned to accept death as an inevitable part of her work, but each loss felt like a fresh wound. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly, driven by a desperate need to save someone, anyone. Her hands shook as she mixed medicines, her eyes burned from exhaustion, but she refused to stop. Asher watched her destroying herself and could not stand by any longer. He came into the infirmary during the middle of the night when Lily was changing sheets on a bed where an old woman had just passed. She was moving mechanically, her face blank, and she did not even acknowledge his presence. "Lily, you need to rest." "I cannot. There are too many patients." "You are no good to them if you collapse. When did you last sleep?" "Eat." "I don't remember." "It does not matter." He stepped closer, gently taking the soiled linens from her hands. "It matters to me." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. "They keep dying. No matter what I do, they keep dying, and I am so tired of watching people die." The words came out in a broken whisper, and suddenly she was shaking. Asher set down the linens and, without thinking, pulled her into his arms. She stiffened initially, then collapsed against him, her hands clutching his shirt. She did not cry, could not cry, but she stood there and let him hold her, and for the first time in years she did not feel so terribly alone. "Come on," he said softly. "I am taking you to get some food and rest. Just for an hour. The other volunteers can manage for an hour." She wanted to protest, but found she had no strength left. She let him guide her out of the infirmary, let him take her to a quiet restaurant where the owner brought them soup and bread. She ate mechanically, aware of Asher watching her with concern. "I worked in hospital tents," she said suddenly, the words spilling out as if a dam had broken. "After various conflicts in the territories, I was there for 4 years, and every single day people died. Young men mostly. Boys, really. Some of them were barely 18, calling for their mothers. I held their hands. I wrote their last letters home. I promised them it would be all right even when I knew it wouldn't be." Asher listened, his heart aching for her. That must have been unbearable. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was strong enough. I learned to lock it away, to not feel too much. But then I came here, and I thought it would be different. I thought I could help people live instead of just watching them die. But it is happening again, and I cannot save them, and I do not know how much more I can take." Her voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. Asher reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, and he wrapped his larger, calloused hand around them. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he said firmly. "The fact that you keep trying, that you keep caring even after everything you have been through, that is incredible. Most people would have given up, would have hardened their hearts completely. But you are still here, still fighting for every patient, still refusing to accept death without a battle. That takes a kind of courage I cannot even imagine." Lily looked at him, this cowboy with kind eyes and steady hands, and felt something shift inside her chest. For so long, she had equated strength with not feeling, with maintaining perfect control. But maybe strength was also allowing yourself to feel, to care, to keep going even when it hurt. "I am afraid," she admitted. "I am afraid of caring about people and losing them. I am afraid of failing again." "We all are," Asher said. "But being afraid and doing it anyway, that is what makes it brave. And you do not have to do it alone. I am here. I am not going anywhere." It was a promise, and something in his tone made her believe him. She squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement, and they sat there in the quiet restaurant, connected by more than just touch. The epidemic ran its course over the next 2 weeks. Dr. Chen recovered and returned to work, still weak but determined. Lily continued her relentless schedule, but now she accepted help, accepted Asher's presence beside her. He did whatever was needed, from hauling water to comforting frightened children to building coffins for those they could not save. He saw her at her most exhausted, most vulnerable, and he never wavered. When the last patient either recovered or succumbed, when the infirmary finally emptied and could be cleaned and closed, Lily walked out into the cold January air and breathed deeply. She had lost count of how many had died, but she also knew they had saved many. The survival rate had been better than it might have been, and that had to count for something. Asher was waiting outside with his wagon. "Let me take you home." She nodded, too tired to speak. He helped her up onto the seat, then climbed up beside her. But instead of heading toward the boarding house, he turned the horses north toward his ranch. "Where are we going?" she asked, but there was no alarm in her voice, only curiosity. "Somewhere you can rest properly, Mrs. Patterson's boarding house is fine, but you need quiet and peace, and I can offer you that. Just for a day or two until you recover. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, who lives on the property. Everything will be completely proper." Lily knew she should protest, knew it was not entirely appropriate, but she found she did not care. She trusted him, she realized. Somewhere along the way, Asher Hale had become someone she trusted completely. His ranch was beautiful, even in winter. The white fencing he had mentioned enclosed rolling pastures where cattle grazed. The house was a solid structure of wood and stone, with a wide porch and large windows. Mrs. Rodriguez, a plump woman with graying hair and a warm smile, greeted them at the door and immediately took charge of Lily, clucking about how thin she was, how exhausted she looked. Lily was shown to a guest room with a large, comfortable bed and thick quilts. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her warm water for washing, clean clothes, and a tray of food. Lily ate a little, washed, and then fell into bed, asleep almost before her head hit the pillow. She slept for 14 hours straight, and when she woke, it was to pale winter sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up from downstairs. She found Asher in the kitchen, cooking breakfast. Mrs. Rodriguez had gone to visit her daughter for a few days, he explained, so it was just the two of them. He served her eggs and bacon and thick slices of bread with butter and jam, and they ate together in comfortable silence. "Thank you," Lily said finally, "for everything. For being there during the epidemic, for bringing me here, for not giving up on me even when I pushed you away." "I could never give up on you," Asher said simply. "From the moment I saw you step off that stagecoach, I knew you were someone special. And getting to know you these past months has only confirmed it. You are remarkable, Lily Morrison." She felt heat rise in her cheeks, unaccustomed to such direct praise. "I am just a nurse doing her job. You are so much more than that." He set down his fork, his expression serious. "You are compassionate and skilled and brave. You have faced horrors that would break most people, and you are still standing, still caring, still fighting. Your strength amazes me every day now." The words hung in the air between them, weighty with meaning. Lily met his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had watched her with such steady patience, and felt her carefully constructed walls finally crumble. She had spent years among the dying, had locked away her own heart to survive, but here was this cowboy offering her something she had thought lost forever: the possibility of connection, of love, of life beyond mere survival. "I am terrified," she whispered. "Terrified of caring about you and losing you. Everyone I have ever cared about has left, one way or another." Asher stood and came around the table, kneeling beside her chair so their faces were level. He took both her hands in his touch gentle but firm. "I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life is uncertain, and we both know that better than most. But I can promise that I am here right now, and I want to be here with you for as long as we are given. Is that not worth something? Is not the joy of connection worth the risk of loss?" Lily looked at him, this good, patient man who had somehow seen past her defenses to the wounded soul beneath, and realized he was right. She had been so focused on avoiding pain that she had shut out everything else too, including happiness, including love. But what kind of life was that? What was the point of surviving if you never truly lived? "Yes," she said, her voice stronger now. "Yes, it is worth it." Asher's face broke into a smile, and he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "May I kiss you?" In answer, she leaned forward and closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper as years of loneliness and longing poured into it. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she wrapped her own arms around his neck, letting herself feel everything she had denied for so long. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Lily felt tears on her cheeks, though whether they were happy or sad, she could not say. Perhaps both. They spent the next 2 days at the ranch, talking for hours, learning each other's stories. Asher told her about his childhood, about watching his mother waste away, about his father's subsequent decline into alcoholism. He told her about taking over the ranch at 20, determined to build something good, something lasting. He spoke of his loneliness, of wondering if he would ever find someone who understood the shadows he carried. Lily told him everything, about her early training as a nurse, about being sent west to tend the wounded, about the endless parade of death she had witnessed. She told him about the friends she had lost, the patients who still haunted her dreams, the crushing weight of never being enough. She cried as she spoke, tears she had held back for years, and Asher held her through all of it, never judging, never pulling away. "How do you keep going?" he asked. "After all of that, how do you still care?" "Because someone has to," she said simply. "Because every life matters, even if I cannot save them all. And because giving up would mean letting the darkness win, and I refuse to do that." He kissed her forehead, her temples, her lips. "Your strength amazes me every day now," he said again. And this time she believed him, believed that she was strong, not despite her scars but because of them. When they returned to Santa Rosa, everyone noticed the change. Lily still worked long hours at the doctor's office, still gave everything to her patients, but now there was a lightness to her that had been absent before. She smiled more readily, laughed at jokes, engaged in conversation. And Asher was a constant presence, courting her properly with flowers and dinners and long walks through town. Dr. Chen watched the romance develop with approval. "You are good for each other," he told them one day. "You both know suffering, and that gives you compassion." But you also both know how to fight, and that gives you strength. Together, you are formidable." As winter turned to spring, Asher proposed. He did it simply, without grand gestures, during a quiet evening at his ranch. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, and he simply said, "Marry me, Lily. Build a life with me. I cannot promise it will be perfect, but I can promise I will love you with everything I have, every single day." Lily looked at him, at this man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway, and said, "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were wed in April 1883 in a simple ceremony at the small church in Santa Rosa. Dr. Chen gave her away. Mrs. Rodriguez and Mrs. Patterson served as witnesses, and half the town turned out to celebrate. Lily wore a simple white dress and Asher wore his best suit, and when they exchanged vows, both had tears in their eyes. They promised to love each other in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, till death did them part, and both understood the weight of those words more than most. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a joining of two souls who had found each other against all odds. Lily had been nervous, never having been with a man before, but Asher was patient and gentle, and they discovered the pleasures of physical intimacy together, taking their time, learning what made the other gasp and sigh. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the large bed in Asher's room, now their room, and talked until dawn. Lily continued to work with Dr. Chen, though now she lived at the ranch and commuted into town several days a week. The other days, she tended to ranch hands when they were injured, helped with difficult animal births, and gradually became known throughout the region as someone skilled and trustworthy. Asher's ranch prospered under their joint management. He handled the cattle and horses, the business side of things, while she managed the household and provided medical care. They were partners in every sense of the word. The nightmares continued for a while. Lily would wake gasping, seeing the faces of the dying, hearing their final words. But now Asher was there to hold her, to remind her that she was safe, that she was home. Gradually, the nightmares became less frequent, replaced by dreams of the future they were building together. In the fall of 1883, Lily discovered she was pregnant. She felt the familiar signs, the missed monthly courses, the tender breasts, the morning nausea, and a complex mix of emotions washed over her. She was thrilled, terrified, awed by the knowledge that she was creating life after spending so long surrounded by death. She told Asher that evening, watching his face carefully, and saw pure joy spread across his features. "A baby," he breathed, his hand moving reverently to her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. Happy does not begin to cover it. "I am ecstatic, overjoyed, terrified, but in a good way." He pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. "We are going to be parents, Lily. We are going to have a family." The pregnancy was mostly smooth, though Lily worried constantly. She had seen so many things go wrong, had assisted at births that ended in tragedy, and she could not shake the fear that something would happen to this child, this precious life growing inside her. Dr. Chen monitored her carefully, and Asher was endlessly patient with her anxieties, holding her when she cried for no reason, fetching whatever strange food she craved, rubbing her aching back as her belly swelled. In May 1884, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours, and Lily understood in a new way what her patients had endured. The pain was overwhelming, but she focused on Asher's voice, on his hand gripping hers, on the knowledge that at the end of this, she would meet her child. When the baby finally emerged with a lusty cry, Lily sobbed with relief and joy. Dr. Chen placed the squirming, bloody infant on her chest, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect face and felt her heart expand in ways she had not thought possible. "A boy," Dr. Chen announced. "A healthy, strong boy." Asher was crying openly, his hand stroking the baby's downy head. "He is perfect. Lily, he is absolutely perfect." They named him James after Asher's father, hoping the boy would embody the best of his grandfather without the tragic weaknesses. Little James had his father's brown eyes and his mother's stubborn chin, and from the beginning he was loved beyond measure. Lily, who had spent so long caring for others' children, now poured all that love into her own son. She nursed him, rocked him, sang to him in the quiet night hours. Asher was a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with a colicky baby, making silly faces to elicit those first precious smiles. As James grew from infant to toddler, Lily found that motherhood healed something in her that she had not even known was broken. Watching this child grow and thrive, knowing that she and Asher had created him, had brought him safely into the world, felt like a triumph over all the death she had witnessed. Every milestone, every first step and first word was a celebration of life, but Lily did not abandon her nursing work. Once James was weaned, she began taking him into town with her a few days a week, setting up a small play area in the corner of Dr. Chen's office where the boy could entertain himself while she saw patients. He grew up around medicine and healing, learning early that his mother was someone special, someone people relied on. In 1886, Lily became pregnant again. This time, she was less anxious, more confident in her body's ability to bring forth life. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and in early 1887, she gave birth to a daughter. The labor was shorter, only 8 hours, and when the baby girl emerged with a head full of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead, both Lily and Asher laughed through their tears. "A daughter," Lily whispered, cradling the baby close. "We have a daughter." They named her Rose for Lily's mother who had died when Lily was young. Little Rose was a fiery, determined child from the start, refusing to be overlooked despite being the younger sibling. She adored her brother James, who was protective and gentle with her, and together the two children filled the ranch house with laughter and noise and life. Dr. Chen retired in 1888, citing his age and a desire to spend his remaining years in peace. He sold his practice to a young doctor from San Francisco, but Lily continued to work part-time, her reputation ensuring a steady stream of patients who requested her specifically. She had become a fixture in Santa Rosa, the nurse who had survived the epidemic of 1882, who had helped countless people through illnesses and injuries, who never turned anyone away regardless of their ability to pay. But her greatest joy was her family. Asher continued to run the ranch successfully, expanding their herds and buying additional land. He taught James to ride, to rope, to care for the animals. He taught Rose too, despite raised eyebrows from some neighbors who thought such things unsuitable for girls. But Asher and Lily raised their children to be capable and independent, regardless of gender expectations. The nightmares had stopped years ago, replaced by dreams of the life they were living. Sometimes Lily would still think about her years among the dying, about the faces she had watched fade, about the letters she had written to grieving families. But now those memories had context, had meaning beyond just tragedy. She had learned compassion in those years, had learned the value of every moment, had learned that strength was not the absence of feeling but the courage to feel anyway. One evening in 1890, when James was 6 and Rose was 3, the family was sitting on the porch watching the sunset. The children were playing with a litter of puppies born to one of the ranch dogs, their laughter ringing out across the yard. Asher had his arm around Lily, her head resting on his shoulder, and everything felt perfect and complete. "You remember the day we met?" Asher asked quietly. "You stepped off that stagecoach looking like you were carrying the weight of the world." "I was," Lily said. "I was drowning in grief and exhaustion and did not even know it. And now—" She turned to look at him, this man who had patiently waited for her walls to come down, who had loved her through her darkness, who had given her the family she had never dared to dream of. "Now I am happy. Truly, deeply happy. I still remember everything I went through, but it does not haunt me anymore. It shaped me, made me who I am, but it does not define me." "Your strength amazes me every day now," Asher said, repeating the words he had spoken years ago. "The way you balance everything, the work and the children and the ranch. The way you still care about every patient. The way you love our family so fiercely. You are extraordinary." Lily kissed him softly. "I learned from you. You taught me that strength is not about never breaking, it is about putting yourself back together. You taught me that love is worth the risk. You saved me, Asher." "We saved each other," he corrected gently. "You gave me purpose beyond just surviving. You gave me a reason to hope again." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. The cattle lowed in the distance, horses whinnied in the stable, cicadas chirped in the grass. It was an ordinary evening, unremarkable in its peacefulness, and that made it all the more precious. As the years passed, their love only deepened. They faced challenges together, droughts and economic downturns and the normal struggles of raising children, but they faced everything as partners. Lily continued her nursing work well into her later years, becoming a mentor to younger nurses, teaching them not just the technical skills, but the emotional resilience needed to do such work without losing yourself. She spoke openly about her years among the dying, using her experiences to help others understand the importance of compassion and self-care. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Asher aged. He inherited his father's business sense and his mother's compassion, treating both animals and people with respect and kindness. Rose became a teacher, passionate about education, and determined to ensure that all children, regardless of background, had access to learning. Both children married and had families of their own, giving Lily and Asher grandchildren to dote on. In 1910, when Lily was 53 and Asher was 54, they celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch. Their children and grandchildren were there, along with friends from town, ranch hands past and present, patients Lily had treated over the years. It was a joyous celebration, full of food and music and dancing. As Lily looked around at all these people, at the life she and Asher had built together, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. That night, lying in bed together, Asher traced patterns on her arm with his fingers. Their bodies showed the signs of age now, wrinkles and gray hair and joints that creaked, but Lily thought he was more handsome than ever. The years had etched character into his face, kindness in every line. "I love you," she said simply. "I have loved you since you refused to let me destroy myself during that epidemic. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Asher replied. "You are still the bravest person I know. Your strength amazes me every day now, just as it did 27 years ago. Just as it will for however many years we have left." They made love slowly, tenderly, a familiar dance performed by bodies that knew each other intimately. Afterward, they held each other close, and Lily thought about how far she had come from that lost, grieving woman who had stepped off a stagecoach in 1882. She had been so broken then, so convinced that caring led only to pain. But Asher had taught her that caring also led to joy, to connection, to a richness of experience that made the risks worthwhile. She had spent years among the dying, had witnessed unimaginable suffering, and those experiences would always be part of her. But they were not all of her. She was also the woman who had found love when she least expected it, who had built a family and a home, who had helped countless people heal, who had lived fully and freely despite her scars. As she drifted off to sleep in Asher's arms, with the sounds of the ranch and the knowledge of her children and grandchildren sleeping nearby, Lily Morrison Hale felt at peace. She had survived the darkness and emerged into light. She had learned that strength was not about never falling but about rising again and again. She had discovered that love, despite its risks, was always worth it. And in the morning, she would wake beside the man who had shown her all of this, who had patiently waited for her to heal, who had loved her unconditionally through everything. She would wake to another day of life and love and purpose, another day to be grateful for, another day to prove that even the deepest wounds can heal given time and care, and a steadfast heart beside you. The cowboy had found out she spent years among the dying, and he had said her strength amazed him every day now. And in doing so, he had given her the greatest gift of all, the courage to truly live again.